Hi, this is Michael Riley, host of the Open Soul Podcast. This special edition was produced by students of our podcast guest training program in October 2024. This training is designed for anyone with little to no experience to become an interesting and engaging guest on any podcast, where you'll be able to inform, entertain, and self-promote after just a few in-person classes. If you would like information about attending one of our workshops in the Phoenix area, please shoot us an email, opensoulpodcast@gmail.com.
This is the Open Soul Podcast.
Hi, this is Sue Lusk, your special guest host on this Open Soul Podcast special edition with my lovely guest, LaJoyce Kerns. Welcome.
Hi, Sue. Thank you for having me today.
So tell us a little bit about yourself. Where do you live, and how did you find out about the place of spiritual wisdom?
Hi, I live in Northwest Peoria. I am a second-generation Arizonan, and I found out about the place of spiritual wisdom when my grandson and I were traveling down Peoria Avenue towards a dance class, and he happened to notice the big sign that said Metaphysical on the side of the building, and I nearly had a wreck. But I came in and stopped to talk to the owner, and we've been here since the beginning of the year.
And what do you find especially interesting about the place of spiritual wisdom?
I like the variety of interests that people have here. There's so many different classes, so many things to learn. Just meeting different people who are at different stages in their development or their understanding of their spiritual journey. I like that.
And what are your special gifts and talents?
Well, I call myself a metaphysical hobbyist because I like to learn about whatever it is that comes across my path that seems interesting. I read tarot and have since about 1980, and I work with crystals, and I dabbled in Reiki a little bit, and I have a setup in my home of scalar energy machines that is, a new technological thing for healing with energy. Whatever comes across my path, I want to learn something about it.
So what's your favorite thing to do in the metaphysical realm?
Right now it's tarot. I come on Tuesdays, and there's a tarot and treats class at 2 o'clock, and I like to come to that and meet the people and read with them and for them and help them learn to read for themselves. And I've recently begun working with the idea of reading what I call other lives through tarot. I was calling them past lives for a while, but in my mind, there is no past. All time is now, so other life seems to suit it better. But I've been working out different kinds of spreads to use with different questions to ask to read about other lives that might be influencing someone in this current life.
Now, do you use the regular Rider Tarot deck for that, or do you use different decks?
I have been using all kinds of different decks. Different decks give different influences to the reading. Rider-Waite is easier to work with just because I'm familiar with the symbology of the cards. There are some others. I've noticed that my Dragon Tarot is not very good at picking up the energies from other lives. I have a beautiful, beautiful set that I got from an artist in Turkey that reads very well, but it tends to delve into the darker aspects of other lives. And I don't want to just focus on that. I want a general, the ups and the downs and whatever. So different decks will give different flavors to the readings I found.
Now, are you self-taught, or did you have a mentor or a teacher?
When I got my first deck, the teacher, the woman I worked with, was teaching me to be an intuitive tarot reader. So that's what I did for a long time. I read the stories of the cards and what the pictures were that influenced me. And then later on, I started to pay attention to the little book that comes with all the different cards, and I thought, well, look at all of that kind of stuff. So I started reading more according to the book and learning some of the traditional meanings, and now I sort of combine the two.
So what's the most profound thing that you've learned doing this?
doing tarot. You need to trust your intuition. No matter how you're reading, you need to. It's a tool to help you learn about yourself and learn how to navigate your life. But it's not I want to say, die-hard predictor of what's going to happen, because the future changes constantly.
Everything is in constant motion. Nothing can ever really be predicted because it's all in the swirl of possibility.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And I love what you said about being right now. It's always right now, where some people refer to past lives, like you mentioned earlier, but it's always right now.
Right.
Because time does not exist. So have you studied or looked into other dimensions? Do you work with that also when you're doing to the cards? Do you get information from other realms?
Yeah, I get my guides talking to me all the time. They're the ones who gave me the idea to work with other lives through tarot. I was talking to some family members, and it's like this idea is shoved into my head. That's how most of the time they contact me, which I guess maybe might be because I'm a little stubborn about listening to them. But they shove an idea into my head, and then I have to start and think about it. So that's where that came from. And when I'm reading, I've learned the nuances of what they want me to see or feel about a card without them actually taking my brain apart to get it there.
Well, I think that we learn that as we go along.
Right.
You know, when we're more open to receive the messages, then that we become like the hollow limb through which
Exactly.
the information and the spirit flows.
Right, exactly.
So what was an aha moment for you doing this?
I was doing meditation, I don't know, maybe a year ago or something. And by the way, meditation is very, very useful to learning about yourself, tapping into the things that you already know but maybe forgot.
Absolutely.
I was sitting in meditation, and I got I don't want to call it a feeling, the understanding that there is an entity I refer to as teacher. Teacher is this vast interdimensional entity, and I am a tiny little glittery spark of teacher. There are innumerable of us out there, and our jobs, if you will, in our lifetimes is to go out, to learn as much as we can, to experience, to understand, so that eventually we can bring all of that back together and have an understanding. In this case, my part is an understanding of what it's like to navigate a three-dimensional material world that has free will.
I think that's something that we all have to navigate, especially now in this time and in space. Like I said, now is all we have.
Right.
So as long as we bring ourselves back to be happy here in the moment,
Yes.
that's the goal.
Right.
And everybody wants to improve the world, but nobody thinks of starting within.
Right. I was coming into the house from the road, bringing the mail in, and I don't remember what exactly was swirling around in my head about something I needed to do. What should I do? I need to do something. And I got very clearly the words, why do, just be.
This is Sue Lusk on the special edition of the Open Soul Podcast with LaJoyce Kerns. We're talking about the difference of just being instead of doing.
Right.
So explain how that works for you, how easy it is or how difficult it is. What do you do to bring yourself back into the present moment of being?
This is a little bit off from that, but it is in answer. Most of my life, I have been in my head. I have been quiet about my thoughts, very quiet about the things I believe, the things I was learning, mostly because I was unsure how I was going to be perceived by other people. In learning more and more about some of the spiritual, metaphysical ideas, after a while it became harder and harder to keep quiet. And I will let you know, this is the first time ever in my life of 75 years that I have actually spoken out in public where other people can hear me.
That's
I've
great.
never done that before.
That is great. And when we're called to do things, sometimes we're very hesitant because we think, who am I to do this?
Yes.
And so we hesitate and make excuses of why that can't be.
Exactly.
So sometimes it takes a long time before we get smacked in the head by Spirit
Exactly, yes.
and says, you're supposed to be doing this.
Yes.
Why are you not doing this? Even though doing and being can also be connected at the same time.
Right. Yeah, I had to figure out who I really was inside and realize that I can share that whether other people want to hear that or not.
That's right. One of the greatest gifts that we can give ourselves is our own true essence, our individuality.
Yes.
Because when we embrace individuality, we discover empowerment.
Oh, I like that.
So
I like that.
It's so important that we get to know who we are inside.
Right.
To take that time to acquaint ourselves with who we are and to let Spirit and our guides and God help us to discover those things within us.
Right.
So what's the most intriguing thing that you have discovered about yourself?
I have discovered that I'm not invisible, which I think for most of my life, that's kind of how I felt. I have always just been very surprised if anybody remembered me. I was sort of thought I faded into the background.
Well, I can tell you do not, because the first time I saw you, your light is so radiant.
Well, thank you.
You know,
Thank
you just have a certain energy about you. And I think those that walk in Spirit have that shine, right?
I see it in other people. I just never saw it in me.
We recognize each other.
Right.
And so we are trying to build a community here that embraces all the different facets of the diamonds that we are.
Well,
right?
and that's very interesting, and I like the way you put that. I know I was speaking with my grandson, Naz, about how maybe I need to not be so quiet on our Friday conversations. I tend to really not to speak up because who am I to talk?
You are LaJoyce Kerns,
Yeah.
and you are a special spirit light from God. We are the sparks that fly from the source. I remember when we were speaking earlier, you mentioned that about how we're all sparks from the same source. And you mentioned something about a teacher that you have learned from on the other side.
Right. Teacher is what I call him. I don't know him, the entity. That I have my own image of him in my head as a male and as a very wise and interdimensional teacher who wanted to experience more of creation, which sounds very similar to Source in a lot of cases, but I don't get the feeling that this is Source. This is maybe a little, maybe a spark of Source himself. So we're all just out there walking down our path, gathering up all the information and knowledge and understanding and having all the fun that we can to relate back to Teacher who will relate back to Source.
Absolutely. So I might have asked you this already. You're talking about learning all these special things. What, in a simple, direct way, what would you like to tell others about the things that you've learned on your path?
Never stop learning. Never stop questioning. Never stop being open to new ideas and new things, even if it is a little scary at first to put yourself out there. Never give up. And because of tarot, I relate this to the Fool card. You're never too old to make a new start. Jump into it with an open heart and an open mind and just enjoy life.
I love the Fool card. That's one of my favorite cards in the deck because it's about carefree. It's about not worrying about what's going to happen. It's about following Source.
Exactly.
I love that card. That's one of my favorite cards.
Thank you. Mine too.
So if people want to get a hold of you for your services, how would they be able to do that?
I will have cards at the Place of Spiritual Wisdom at the front desk, and it has my phone number and my email address. And I would welcome talking with anybody.
Well, thank you so much, LaJoyce, for being here today. It's been a pleasure speaking with you and as well a pleasure knowing you.
Thank you so much, Sue. I really appreciate talking with you.
This is the Open Soul Podcast.